Welcome back. This is the part 2 episode with Sam Washington as we talk about the greatest players of all time, both at St. Cecilia in Detroit and across the National Basketball Association.
When you say GOAT, and people debate about it all the time, to me, you need to go by errors. Like we talked earlier, Wilt Chamberlain, his stats. He's not even in the conversation of the GOAT. And if you look at his numbers, you'd be like, why is he not?
I completely agree.
You know, some of the stuff he doesn't get the respect, I think, that, like the guys do
if
now.
you go peer to peer, there is no comparison peer to peer.
Yeah, Kareem, is in the conversation too. But once again, you look at the numbers that Wilt had. I mean, one year he averaged like 55 points, 28 rebounds, maybe 12 assists, and maybe 8 or 9 block shots. It's just crazy. Yeah, he didn't get a lot of the rings like some of these other guys got, but,
They didn't keep block shots as a stat, but there was a guy on the bench in Philadelphia keeping block shots. And at one point, Wilt Chamberlain had a season where he had 11 per game.
See, why is he not in the conversation, as a GOAT? It just baffles me that he's not there. And then, bringing back to today, it's really kind of, like I said, to me, it used to be in eras. You got the era that Wilt was in, and then you got the era where Magic was in, and then you got the era now, where LeBron is in. That's how it should be done. Not because it's, with Michael Jordan, of course, that era, it's really hard.
So it sounds like you would stage it. Wilt Chamberlain in his era.
Mm-hmm.
Magic Johnson in his era. Michael Jordan in his era. LeBron James in his era.
Yeah.
Those are your 4 that you're putting a soft circle on. Anybody else that you want to throw in to that top 4?
Kareem and Kobe.
Mm-hmm. Big man, swing man. Kobe could do it all, fill it up from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Comes into the league right out of high school. Wins
with swag, thinking he's better than everybody,
Wins championships left and right with all kinds of different teammates.
Tremendous work ethic. He's in the gym 6 o'clock in the morning. I heard a story about Kobe just recently that they were on a road trip, with the Lakers, and he had a bunch of young guys on his team, and they're in Atlanta, and they go like, "Hey, Kobe, we're gonna hang out tonight." Kobe said, "Wait a minute, we got a game tomorrow." I said, no, we hanging out. Kobe said, "Okay, look, I'll hang out with you guys, okay? But if I hang out with you guys, 5:30 in the morning the next day, we're in the gym working out, getting ready for the game." That was the agreement. 5 o'clock the next morning, after the guys hung out, Kobe's knocking on everybody's door. "Come on, guys, let's go.
I thought you said you'd be ready.
Yeah, you'd be ready, that's a powerful statement right there.
You hear these stories about all of the great ones, right? That they were willing to go that extra mile, make that extra sacrifice, be disciplined at a level that nobody else was disciplined at. And I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is another great example of that. I mean, he becomes one of the highest level black belts in martial arts, trains with Bruce Lee. He wins a championship in Milwaukee. He wins multiple championships in L.A. He wins championships with 2 different names.
And then here's the thing about Kareem. He was not afraid to cross the line, if you will, and speak up, for civil rights. Yeah. He stood up with Muhammad Ali and the late Jim Brown and those guys, because he had a platform, and at that time, I don't think America was ready for that type of platform,
and a lot of guys have pushed away that platform, dismissed that. Magic or Michael Jordan is a perfect example of saying, "Look, Republicans buy shoes too."
Yeah,
right. It's not my place to decide which way you want to vote. I'm here to play basketball. We got the 4 bunched up. You added Kobe and Kareem to the list as well. Anybody else that would make your short list? And now I'm thinking about players from multiple eras. You've got the 4 that you mentioned. You mentioned Kareem and Kobe. I'm sure some people in Boston would put Larry Bird in there and Bill Russell in there. I'm sure that people in Philadelphia would put Julius Erving
in there. Yep.
We talked about what a difference he made. Maybe some of the old timers would put Elgin Baylor and Jerry West in there.
Jerry is the logo in the NBA.
Yeah, the logo man. Oscar Robertson gets brought up because if they'd have been keeping triple-double stats, a lot of people say he damn near averaged a triple-double.
Averaged a triple-double, You're right. That's what I'm saying, Joe. It's just hard to say, oh, yeah, this is the GOAT, for basketball. You got to go in the eras. That's just my opinion.
No, I like that. I agree. If we're taking in eras into account, just because this guy gets so much notoriety today, I want to throw him in the mix. He gets mentioned on a lot of top 10 lists, but he never won a championship, and he's very outspoken. So, again, I think people sometimes shy away from him. Where would you put Charles Barkley in the mix?
Charles is definitely up there in the top 10. Top 15, top 10, yeah, because if you look at his size and, Charles is only about 6'5", to have an impact on the NBA games and the way he did and then, what he's doing now. But one thing I do want to add in terms of like the rules, like back in the day, like especially for a guard, when you dribble in the basketball, your hand had to be on top of the ball.
Right.
Now guys can put it on the side, they're carrying, they're stepping. You're like, come on, I wish I could have done that. That makes a big difference.
Oh, it completely gets thrown out.
Yeah. People don't realize that. Like Allen Iverson was good at that. Just carrying the ball from the side, and traveling and stuff. I'm like, of course you can blow by a guy if you can do that.
The average NBA dribble, in my opinion, from Stephon Marbury to today, right? From Marbury to today, the average dribble is a carry.
It's a carry. Bob Cousy couldn't do that. He had his ball on top of the basketball and was a wizard at it. Pistol Pete, the same way, Walt Frazier, Tiny Archibald, you had to have your palm on top of the ball, not on the side or not under it, like guys can do today.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference.
It makes a huge difference. And it also brings into focus probably what most people would say is the greatest Detroit Piston of all time, Isaiah Thomas. Because he was also one of these guys who, in the very early days, could cross you over.
Yeah.
Right? The whole idea of the crossover, I don't know who they stake the claim was the first and most proficient at it, but Isaiah Thomas was definitely in that conversation.
Him and Tim Hardaway, that's what they call him, Mr. Crossover, because he'll break you down.
That's right,
and leave you on the island by yourself. Yeah.
Who else would you put in the list of, say, don't get the credibility they deserve, the underrated top 15, top 20?
Underrated, you got to have Chris Webber in that conversation. I think Penny Hardaway, Shaquille O'Neal. We haven't said anything about Shaq. He made a big difference with his size.
How about Clyde the Glide?
Oh, no doubt.
Drexler and Olajuwon.
Drexler, Olajuwon. That's what I'm saying. It's so many. Dan Roundfield, I mentioned him earlier.
Since the Chicago Bulls documentary has come out, a lot of people are revisiting Scottie Pippen as an all-time great.
Sure did. Barely touched on Larry Bird. He has to be there. We mentioned Connie Hawkins. He didn't get his just due. Spencer Haywood's another one.
Bill Russell won 11 championships.
Bill Russell.
If we just want to talk about championships, player coach, he won 11 championships. But Dave DeBusschere was a player coach with the Pistons back in the day and won the championship with the Knicks. But Bill Russell goes player coach and wins championships with the Boston Celtics, the greatest basketball team of all time.
Yeah.
And there's some other names on that team, Tommy Heinsohn and John Havlicek. John Havlicek, I think, won 8 championships.
He was phenomenal coming off the bench, Havlicek stole the ball, those stories. And
Bob Cousy, Casey Jones.
Unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. And then we haven't talked about Moses Malone. He made a tremendous impact.
First high school player.
Yeah, exactly. Philly wouldn't have won that championship in '83 until they made that trade for Moses. That made the big difference. Boom. It was over.
So we break down, I think we can narrow your worldview here down to a top 5. Who gets the 5th spot, Kareem or Kobe? Because I got your 4 from the eras, but you got to give me the 5th to round out your top 5.
I'm gonna have to say Kareem, because he was until late the leading scorer, in the NBA, and Kareem made a tremendous impact. And when he came out of high school, guys had to play freshmen. Remember that?
Right.
Had to play freshmen. So he only played 3 years on varsity at UCLA, and he kind of like changed the game some too because.
The sky hook. I mean,
there was no dunking.
Yeah.
He couldn't dunk the ball when he was in college for the most part.
The guy's got his own shot.
Yeah, the sky hook that I don't know why guys don't try to patent that and use that now. That's just unstoppable.
It is unstoppable.
It's unstoppable.
Unless you're playing against Wilt Chamberlain, who I have video on, blocked it twice.
Right, yeah. I'll take those odds, with a shot like that. He was accurate from deep in the corner, left hand, right hand. I mean, unbelievable. Even Magic shot a hook shot in one of those championship series against Boston, sweet running across the free throw lane that made a difference in that game too.
Whether they admit it or not, most big men have taken pages out of the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar book.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that locks in the top 5. Now let's break down that 5 and get to a GOAT. You've got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar versus Wilt Chamberlain. We've talked about the stats there. Then you move up that chain to Jordan, LeBron, and Magic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jordan, LeBron, and Magic, I think most people, even though he brings the ball up the floor and wants the ball in his hands, I think most people see LeBron James as a forward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, he could play either one or anywhere, really.
Mm-hmm.
But most people see him as a forward, whereas I think most people see Michael Jordan as a guard. And again, even though he could play the shooting forward slot or anywhere he needed to play. And then, when you look at Magic Johnson, you're looking at a guy who played the pure point guard position, but in isolation, you definitely couldn't defend him with your point guard.
Remember his rookie year? He did it all. Jumped center because Kareem was injured, couldn't play against the Sixers. He jumped center, brought the ball out. He did it all just like he did in high school. That was – at that size, when I was coming up, if you over 6'2", you're a center. First thing a coach say, get down low, big fella, like that, And even now, like 7-footers, what are they doing, Joe? Shooting 3-pointers.
Right.
Back then, coaches sit you on the bench if you're taking 3-pointers and you 6'9", 6'8", 7 foot. Things that's changed. So go ahead.
Yeah. When I think about the positions that impact the game the greatest, right? I have to weigh that into the GOAT conversation, right? If you're the greatest of all time, and you're going to be able to say that you had the greatest impact on winning and losing and on the success of your team, and they're keeping these statistics now, these impact on wins statistics, right? All the new Saber analytics and all this new statistical environment that we're living in. You think about who had the ball in their hands. Okay, so one school of thought would be, well, the point guard gets some level of tip of the cap in these conversations because they had to dictate all of the play from a pace standpoint.
Right, they're an extension of the coach, as I call it. Yeah.
The quarterback on the floor, right? The coach on the floor, whatever you want to refer to the point guard as. But in the modern NBA, the LeBron Jameses and the Michael Jordans of the world, whether they were playing the 2 guard or the 3, they take the ball whenever they want.
The ball, the majority of the time, yeah.
Right? Unless you're putting backcourt pressure on somebody, you need a true point guard to handle through it. If you're walking the ball up the floor, anybody can do that. So we have seen a lot of that in the NBA where all the way from Jordan forward, you've got players that were just in isolation carrying the ball up the floor and quarterbacking the offense, no matter what the number they were designated as on the position sheet. So it's hard for me to say that Magic Johnson deserves a different level of spotlight just because he was considered a point guard. Because as you mentioned, there are points where he did it all.
He did it all,
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I'll give it some added credibility. But prior to that, guys that, we may consider being the GOAT, they wouldn't dream of, going to another team and bringing other players with them. They were all gung-ho, and the fact that we're going to do it right here with what we have. Well, you know those type of mentality.
I want to give you a flashback on that because you just hit a major point. There's a guy who very few people know about who played in the 1950s into the mid-1960s named Bob Pettit.
Mm-hmm. St.
Louis Hawks.
I know who he is.
Right?
Yeah.
Before the Hawks moved to Atlanta, before they got bought out in the mid-1960s, I think it was 67, 68 season, before they got moved to Atlanta, he played 10 seasons, all for the same team. Wouldn't play for anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
When they left, he left, that kind of thing. Again, it wasn't the kind of league where you could make a ton of money, right? So he went on and probably got a bigger and better job, probably made more money in the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
But Bob Pettit, in his career, he goes 26 and a half a game, 16.2 rebounds per game, 3 assists per game, and shoots almost 44% from the field.
Wow.
I mean, that's saying something. Is tremendous across the stat line. But in an NBA championship, the only championship they ever won, in an NBA championship series, 1958, he goes in the championship game against the Boston Celtics, right, who won it every year. They were the thorn in everybody's side was the Boston Celtics. And in a Game 6 clinching game, he takes 34 shots. He makes 19 of them. He goes 12 of 15 from the free throw line. He scores 50 points and gets more than 20 boards to win by 1 point. And in the fourth quarter, he scores 19 of the last 21 to win the game.
And they won the championship.
They won the championship. 19 of the last 21. Guy has a career where he averages 26 a game and 16 boards. And we don't even mention Bob Pettit. That's how long ago.
How many years did he play with them?
He played 10 years.
10 years. See, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Stuff like that. I didn't even know that. Those stats you just told me, that's unbelievable. And he stayed with one team. See,
They stayed with one team.
That's what I meant by a lot of guys prior. Ego was like, no, I'm staying. We're gonna do it here. We're gonna do it right here with the team we're on right now. I heard players say that.
George Mikan with all those championships with the Minneapolis Lakers before the Lakers moved to L.A. One team.
Yeah,
stayed with one team.
Things are different now. Now guys are, they're taking other guys with them. They're talking in the summer, I'm sure. So, hey, we get together like when LeBron first did it with Miami when he took he met up with, I guess, D. Wade and Bosh. I'm like, wow.
The first super team.
Yeah.
3 stars on one team.
People were like, yeah, they're supposed to win. They didn't remember the first year they didn't win it. But then they came back the following 2 years and won.
LeBron James, just a little bit better than Bob Pettit at 27.2 right now. If his career ended today, he'd be at 27.2 per game. 7.5 rebounds, so not even half what Pettit had in rebounds, not even in the conversation.
How tall was Pettit?
He's a 6'8".
6'8".
Okay. And LeBron would be better in assists. Pettit had 3 assists. LeBron is 7.3. So more than double the assists as a playmaker. So and LeBron's 50% from the field. So again, LeBron has significant statistical advantage in 3 of those big categories. But
what about free throws? What does it give?
Pettit was 76% or so from the free throw line.
That's LeBron's biggest weakness in my opinion. Free throws,
73 and a half.
Yeah, especially for the money.
73 and a half is what he goes. And then of course, right, we've gone a long time in this conversation without digging into the North Carolina Tar Heel national championship, 2-time three-peater for the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan. And we just had a big movie about Michael, Air, come out. We mentioned Sonny Vaccaro, the one who recruited him into the Nike family, having been a stalwart at the Saint in Detroit. But Michael Jordan, 30 points a game for a career. 6.2 rebounds a game, 5.3 assists. Okay, remember, those stat lines with the championships that he won with not a tremendous. I know people are revisiting the career of Scottie Pippen, and I know he had some good role player pieces around him, but they really developed the whole team around Michael to produce the stat line and lead the team the way they did.
They did, yeah.
So I do look at that with a little bit more of a critical eye, right? That the rest of these guys, in most cases, had to fit into situations where there was a super team being put together, right?
Right.
Or where you already had a star. I mean, Magic has to go play with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right?
I feel that's not good, right?
Right. But as a guard, right, perfect situation for Magic to beef up his assists and have win championships. But the whole thing wasn't built just around Magic to have a stat sheet. In the beginning, when Michael Jordan gets to Chicago, really he's the attendance draw. So they're trying to create a stat sheet for him. Right? They want to put him in positions to be the high flyer, to put people in the seats. Now, after a couple of years, they get through the Celtics and the Lakers run. They get through the Bad Boys run, where the Bad Boys are beating the living daylights, and they got the Jordan rules. And now once it gets to be his chance and his time, they start filling in the pieces, right? Horace Grant, Scottie Pippen, B.J. Armstrong, John Paxson, you name all the Steve Kerr. They start filling in all these pieces. Does that make you downgrade Jordan in any way, shape, or form for just having this whole thing, this whole stat sheet built around him for a while?
Not at all, because to me, Jordan's coming out party in NBA was against Boston, the time when he had 63 points.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He was
right out of the chutes.
Yeah. That was his coming out party. So then, okay, I think Boston went on and won, but that was his coming out party. So the team that they surrounded themselves, Chicago did, around Jordan, fit the pieces, but that's what a GM is supposed to do, put together a team, right? Because no one guy can win anything by himself unless you're playing tennis or something like that. But, yeah, and then what stands out in terms of talking about the GOAT with Jordan is the fact that, remember, he left. Regardless of why he left, went to play baseball, That's really hard to do. That's like if you have an injury and you're out for a whole year, some guys never recoup.
Oh, yeah. We talk about it when we talk about baseball players. These guys who went away and fought in World War II for 2 years and then came back like Ted Williams and hit damn near 400.
Yeah, that's hard, because you got to get different mindset, the whole nine. So he went away and played baseball, came back and won 3 more.
I know. Unbelievable.
That's crazy to me. It really is.
It really is crazy.
It's crazy.
It's a crazy thought to have a guy walk away from the sport completely and not like, hey, I'm just sitting around playing basketball over here because they put me on this.
I didn't touch a ball.
Right, put me on this weird ass suspension for whatever we'll never know what happened. Right? That's not what he was doing. He went and focused on a completely different sport.
Yeah, and like I said, he probably only touched the ball every now and then at the time, wasn't thinking, you know what I'm saying?
To be in Space Jam, the movie?
Yeah, something like that, and then you come back and you win 3 more. Now, that takes it to another level.
It does. Even though you want to say, okay, well, he had the whole thing built around him. He was just a stat sheet in the beginning of his career. Well, he also didn't have very good players around him.
Not at all.
Right? Magic Johnson had some really nice pieces in L.A. Larry Bird had some phenomenal pieces in Boston. Kareem, the only guy who you can compare Michael Jordan to who never had the pieces around him, of course, until he got to the very end of his career with the Lakers, was Wilt Chamberlain.
Yep.
So let's look at Wilt Chamberlain.
So we're getting close.
We're getting close. Another guy who goes 30 points a game, 30.1. Except instead of having the measly little rebounds numbers that the rest of these guys have, Wilt Chamberlain goes 23 rebounds a game, 22.9 rebounds, almost 23 rebounds per game for Wilt Chamberlain, and 4.5 assists. And remember, when he went to Philadelphia, there was a moment where the new coaching staff came in and said, Wilt, you can't be scoring 100 points in a game because this man scored 100 points in an NBA basketball just to show you what he could do on any given night if he decided to. He scored 100 points in an NBA basketball game. New coaching staff comes in and says, Wilt, we can't win basketball games if you're trying to score 100 points. So he leads the team in assists for the next season. Over 9 assists a game, running the offense through him at 7 foot. No one in NBA history has ever led their team in scoring and then led the league in scoring and then turned around and led their team in assists the next season the way that he did, proving he could truly do it all.
See, that makes it hard because with that type of scenario to Wilt, like I said before, Wilt was so dominant, he felt sorry for some of his opponents.
He absolutely did.
So he he let back, held back a little bit,
He also was dealing with in some of these small towns they were going into, the Jackie Robinson effect, right? Where you don't want to piss everybody off in town, right? When you're an African American player in that era, you don't want to rub it in everybody's face. You don't want, Wilt Chamberlain, for all the criticism he took for not being what maybe the civil rights movement wanted him to be, he was a great gentleman of the game from the standpoint of you never hear about any controversies of him running around doing things that inflamed the scenario.
He was an all-out nice guy too. When I was in college, we played at the University of Hawaii in Hawaii, and Wilt was at the game. After the game, he came in. I was shocked and shook everybody's hand and said, nice game, guys. I was like, damn, that's Wilt Chamberlain. But yeah, he was just a nice, and he had a conscience. He didn't want to, like you just said, Joe, he didn't want to, show anybody up too much. I agree. He could have easily probably averaged at least 80 points a game if he wanted to.
He had some 16, 17, 18 games where he scored over 50 points. It's ridiculous. Half of the list of 50 and 60-point games is Wilt Chamberlain. When you look at the number of games that many points has been scored in, half of the list in some of these is Wilt Chamberlain.
A lot of the other records too, rebounds and stuff like that too. And
we talked about block shots. They didn't even keep the statistics. Unofficially, he averaged over 10 block shots in a season. I'm sorry.
Like I said, it was just a different mentality that he had to go through when he was playing his era because he was so much bigger than everybody. They say he was strong as hell. He just felt sorry for some cats. He could have broke a lot of arms, I'm sure, if he wanted to, on the rim, dunking on them and stuff like that.
He went from Philadelphia to San Francisco, back to Philadelphia with the whole Warriors thing fluctuating back and forth, and then finished his career with the Lakers.
Yeah, he was a tremendous volleyball player. But
track. They say that his
too,
high jump and his speed and his high hurdles, he could do everything on a track.
And when he played Boston against Russell, Russell had the better team surrounding him, but
it's not even close.
Yeah.
When you look at the stat lines, he had more than 6 or 7 rebounds more than Russell. He scored more than 8 points a game more than. As far as them playing one-on-one, Chamberlain dominated him. It was the fact that Bill Russell had 4 Hall of Famers on the floor with him at the same time, and Red Auerbach coaching the team.
Hall of Fame coach, yeah.
Chamberlain played at 7'1", 275 pounds. He wasn't 275 in college. Come on. But that's what they got him listed at. He played for Kansas. He averaged 30 a game at Kansas, 18.3 rebounds, and a very similar situation to not wanting to embarrass his opponent.
Probably had no dunking allowed,
57, he was on the all-tournament team. He was the most outstanding player. He was a consensus All-American.
I think that Chamberlain, he was so big that he just, he probably got teased a lot when he was in school, grade school on up, and he just got to the point where he just wanted to blend in, just be like everybody else, but he couldn't, you know what I mean? And he probably got teased, and when he got to the NBA and stuff, he had that mentality, okay, yeah, I could dominate this guy, but I don't want to hurt him, I don't want that, all that kind of stuff was going through his head, whereas if he had that mentality like a Kobe, like that dog mentality, and Jordan, he probably would have averaged 100 points a game if he wanted to.
As a California guy at that time, he took a different lifestyle approach. He took that free love,
Like Bill Walton did the same thing.
He took that lifestyle approach. It wasn't frowned upon in that area at that time.
Because it was
So
acceptable.
when he came out and said, yeah, I slept with 10,000 women, to him, that was, hey, that was part of the free love. That was part of his generation. While the other people around America were going, okay, well, that's not what I want my kids. I don't want.
Right, yeah.
That's not
How
what.
could he write a book like that? How did he keep in track?
Right. That's not the hero that I want my kids looking up. And there's some credence to that, right? As a parent, you don't, want that to be something that somebody's putting on their bulletin board and trying to achieve, right? But it was a different era. It wasn't, I don't think that Wilt Chamberlain was trying to pose it as a conquest.
Yeah, like he was bragging and stuff. Just say, hey, this was my lifestyle.
That's my lifestyle. That's the way I want to live my life. Maybe there was ego in play there. He was petting his own ego.
Because he can get anybody he wanted, And the guy still can do that. Most athletes and entertainers and celebrities.
No different than today, right? We try not to factor in all of the off-the-court stuff because the greatest of all time is, it's a composite, right?
It's a composite.
But you do look at guys in the totality of their humanhood, right? Tough to argue with what Magic Johnson has done as an entrepreneur, as an ambassador of the game, fighting through the HIV virus and his activism on that front. Amazing. But you also look at a guy like LeBron James, who has seemingly never been in trouble, right? All of the guys around him are getting in trouble. All of the guys around him have multiple wives, painting a broad brush.
Some kind of scandal going on, yep.
Not LeBron James. LeBron James seems to keep trucking along, staying between the lines. He might make and we are in a hyper-focused generation of snowflake world, right? Like you do anything wrong, the wind blows a certain way.
Social media.
And social media could paint you in a very ugly way, right? LeBron James seems to be able to navigate that to near perfection. Magic Johnson has been, an emblem. And again, he was one. We've seen Winning Time and the documentary about Magic. He readily admits that he went through his Wilt Chamberlain stage of womanizing and everything else. But these guys came through the other side and are now what you would consider high character reference points.
Yeah. In terms of our conversation, and we're trying to narrow this down based on what we're saying, I'm going to have to say Jordan.
Michael Jordan. I'm gonna stick with your first inkling. I'm gonna break it down like this. Again, point guard status, the court generalship. Magic Johnson gets the nod. Power forward, utter to both ends of the court domination, can do anything, be anywhere, guard anyone. I think it's tough to dispute that LeBron James is the physical specimen of all time. But he's had all the modern science.
Physical, Joe?
Physical.
You got to say Wilt then. Physical.
I'm getting there. If I look at pure tenacity and championship mindset, yeah, I give the nod to Michael Jordan because of those 2 3-peats, leaving the game, coming back to the game, the amount of mental toughness that had to take, his outlook and just utter ferocity towards championship level, just phenomenal. But I have to look at the stat line, and I have to look at what you did to your peers. Bill Russell.
You might make me change my mind.
Bill Russell was widely considered one of the greatest players of all time. Was, right? 11 championships. Wilt Chamberlain schooled him statistically every time they went at it, right?
I agree.
He had great games against Kareem when he was way past his prime. He still was able to muscle up Kareem when Kareem was in Milwaukee. Now, Kareem got the best of him on the stat sheet, but this was way later in his career, right? When he had
Kareem,
a lot of pieces around him.
Yeah, Wilt mentored Kareem. He used to give him clothes and stuff like that, yeah.
Wilt Chamberlain with well over 20 rebounds. I mean, just think about that. The rest of these guys aren't even a half or a third of the rebounds. The block shots. You couldn't go in the paint against Wilt Chamberlain because, Sam, it wasn't just that he was 7'1". He was a 7'1" high jumper.
High jumper.
So he could his vertical was outstanding, and he was 7'1", and his wingspan was a record-setting wingspan from tip of his finger to the
tremendous shape too, all the time,
right? So the formidability in the paint, the fact that he threw up 100 points, the fact that he had the most 50 and 60-point games, which shows he could do it whenever he wanted to, the fact that he had over 9 assists a game when they told him that we're going to run the offense through you and you got to be a better distributor of the ball, the fact that he averages 30, right? The fact that the 1 year where he decides to shoot free throws underhand at a higher percentage, he averages almost 50.
Yeah.
he goes into the 40s for an average during that season. When I weigh all of that statistical relevance and I say against your peers, how did you compete and how did you affect the game? I got to go Wilt Chamberlain number
See,
one.
you didn't break that down to me like that, But yeah, the way you just put that in terms of like the peers and all that, and I know a lot about Wilt because I researched. I've seen him play a few times, but I know a lot about him. Yeah,
I think that's
I said that at the beginning. 100 points in a game, nobody's gonna do that, right? And then that 1 year he averaged 55 points, 28 rebounds. Nobody's going to do that.
Nobody's going to have the number of 50-point games.
He doesn't have all the championships, but, he didn't have the supporting cast around him like some of these other people that's under the consideration for the GOAT is either. People were just intimidated by Wilt.
Yeah.
Just period, And he grew up like that, I'm sure, because he was so much – I've seen pictures of him when he was in grade school and high school. He's so much taller than everybody else. Kids tease him and stuff like that. When he got to the NBA – he just dominated right from day one,
From the moment he stepped in.
I agree with you on that. Absolutely.
Michael Jordan wins a college national championship. He wins the 6 NBA championships. He's got 2 3-peats. He's an owner. He created a franchise in Air Jordan that will live on. And you can't – the impact on the game and the impact on society that Michael Jordan has, second to none. If that's what we were saying, then the GOAT would be Michael Jordan. Yeah, overall impact on the game.
Yeah, then social media is a big play, factor into that.
Yeah, I'm not discounting any of that.
Neither am I.
And I do think that Magic Johnson and LeBron James have a seat at the table. But I really do think that it's a 2-horse race between Michael Jordan and Wilt Chamberlain. And statistically speaking, it really drives me bananas when I see these people online trying to put LeBron over all of them, given it just statistically speaking and peer-to-peer, it's not close.
Yeah, and then if you add in, once again, social media, who are they hyping up? LeBron, Michael, Kobe, you rarely get the conversation in depth about Wilt like you and I are discussing right now, and that's why too.
Right. And of course, the Boston contingent is going to, the East Coast contingent is going to bark about Bill Russell and Larry Bird. Maybe if Larry Bird didn't have the chronic back injuries, he'd have been able. But a big man passing the basketball the way that Larry Bird did, I give him some. If you had to just be a pure shooting forward, yeah. If it's just a pure shooting forward, Larry Bird is in the conversation positionally speaking. The whole net effect on the game, not even close. Right. Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, to me, are heads. I think you got a better argument for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, for LeBron James, or for Larry Bird. I don't think you put either of them in the conversation over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I don't think you could put either of them in the conversation over Kobe Bryant.
No, and then if you look at the record book, Wilt still has so many records that he holds right now. People don't even talk about some of the stuff, some of the records that he had. It was just a big, point wise, they looked at that. That's the main factor, right? Because when LeBron broke Kareem's scoring title record, that was a big deal. Kareem handed him the torch, so to speak, and stuff like that. But if you look at records,
people say, "Oh well, What if Wilt would have had to play in this era? Wilt was 7'1" and a better athlete.
You block everything.
And you can play zone now. Can you imagine if Chamberlain had the bad knees at the end of his career, or he'd have played another 5 years?
Yeah,
Can you imagine if centers weren't pulling him out of the paint? If he was just able to camp out the way the rest of these guys are now, sagging into the zone that they could. I mean, Wilt might have got another 5 years out of those legs.
He would have dominated Shaq.
There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, you just look at him, and he was physically so much stronger than anybody else. You have to think.
He was afraid. He was going to hurt somebody.
Exactly. You have to think there were nights where Wilt Chamberlain just said, I want to let some of the other guys play. Right? I want to let some of the other guys be successful. You talk about all the triple doubles, the quadruple double. Right? If you would have kept block shots, those seasons when he came back to Philadelphia, after they went to San Francisco, they came back to Philadelphia, when he had to become, we're going to run the offense through you, and he's averaging 9+ assists. I mean, on those nights, he's averaging a quadruple double sometimes across weeks of the season. It's just
crazy,
incomparable statistically.
Block shots and then altered shots because they were there's Kareem.
Right.
They go, Will, let me get rid of it.
Look at that's this whole statistic about wins, right? That they're trying to factor in how many wins did you influence. Look at teams' shooting percentages when they play against Wilt Chamberlain.
Man, if I was a player, I would love to play with Wilt.
Right? There were teams who weren't even taking the ball into the paint. They just decided we got a better chance of pulling from 18 to 20 feet and just keeping the block shot out of the game, because he was having games where he had 20+ block shots.
Did they have a shot clock back then too?
The shot clock comes in 1954, so yes.
Yeah, they did. Okay.
So he had the shot clock, but the changes in the shot clock don't come in until recent. The resetting of the shot clock on the offensive rebound, and the rest of that comes in and all the way up to 2018, this new one with the 14-second reset. But the three-point shot, right? I mean, that comes in much later, right? I think the overall net effect of Wilt Chamberlain on other teams' overall shooting percentage gets completely brushed under the rug. Nobody talks about that.
Right.
That's an impact on the game.
Big time.
Nobody can sit here and say, well, Michael Jordan totally destroyed the shooting percentage of other teams. That's, he's one guy out of 5. Yeah, he was a good defender, a great defender, right? Who could lock people down. But the other 4 guys could get their shots off on whoever, whenever. Obviously, Scottie Pippen being a great defender on that team too.
Right.
Wilt Chamberlain, everybody in the paint had to decide to go elsewhere.
Big time. Yeah, they were looking for him.
So we're going to wrap up GOATQuest with the final list. I'm going to take some liberties, Sam, but I'm going to keep it very close to what we came up with. I think in that kind of final flurry of who gets into the top 10, we're in the kind of Jerry West, Akeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley. There's a bunch of players down there that are very close. I mentioned Bob Pettit with an incredible stat line. I mean, that's another one where I think a lot of guys could fall into that 10 spot. I'm going to stick Charles Barkley at that 10 spot.
Oh, yeah, I can't complain against that.
Number 9, Dr. J. Julius Erving, both an ABA and NBA great, Philadelphia 76ers NBA champion. All right, number 8, Larry Bird, Boston Celtics, the top shooting forward on the list. Number 7, another Celtic, Bill Russell. 11-time NBA champion, player, coach, activist, civil rights leader. May he rest in peace. Bill Russell comes in at number 7. Number 6, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, formerly Lou Alcindor. Milwaukee Bucks championship as Lou Alcindor. He, again, another activist, civil rights leader, changes his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for religious reasons and goes on to win multiple championships as a Los Angeles Laker, leading all the way into the modern era as the all-time leading scorer until very recently. Number 5, Kobe Bryant, 5-time NBA champion.
Yep, 5.
Kobe Bryant comes into the league at 18. He does it with multiple different teammates. He stays old school with the same organization. Two-way player, great lockdown defender, probably, if not the most competitive, one of the most competitive players of all time. Demanded a tremendous amount from his teammates, and in almost everyone's estimation, one of the greatest NBA competitors of all time. Again, may he rest in peace for his tragic passing in recent years. That brings us to the top four, the four that we debated the most. We're coming in at number 4 with the greatest power forward, certainly, in the history of the game. 3 different teams he takes to NBA championships. Never played a minute of college basketball. Right from Akron, Ohio, into the NBA as a dominant force. Came back to Cleveland to win a championship after leaving his hometown and winning championships with the Miami Heat. King James, LeBron James, number 4, but great debate between he and number 3, the greatest point guard in the history of basketball, Magic Johnson. Played at the Saint, a St. Cecilia legend and AAU undefeated champion in his teenage years. Wins a national championship with Greg Kelser, coached by Judd Heathcote at Michigan State University. Comes right into the NBA with the Los Angeles Lakers on a team with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, where he leads that team. Can play everywhere on the floor. Ends up as an activist for defeating the HIV virus, almost eliminating AIDS from the public consciousness with the efforts on the medical front after his career, and an amazing entrepreneur who's reached billionaire status as a businessman. Magic Johnson, Los Angeles Lakers great, is number 3. At number 2, and the 1 and 2 were a great debate, Michael Jordan is our number 2. I know that hurts some people. He wins 3 championships in a row on 2 different occasions. He goes for 30 points a game. He was a dominant defender, the biggest clutch player of all time, the big shot in the big moments. And he did it with limited talent for a lot of his career on those Chicago Bulls teams. Michael Jordan, certainly as an Air Jordan icon, the most iconic player in the history of basketball, and maybe the most iconic athlete of all time, Michael Jordan. But we look at things statistically, and we look at them peer-to-peer, and we judge the eras independently, and statistically, era to era, peer to peer, you simply cannot deny the utter dominance of Wilt Chamberlain across the eras. A 7'1" Kansas Jayhawk who comes into the NBA, Philadelphia, San Francisco, ends his career with the Lakers. Assists, rebounds, blocked shots, quadruple doubles, 100 points in a game, the most 50-point games, the most 60-point games. He led his team in assists. He led the world in blocks. He was a defensive force that lowered the whole shooting percentage of other teams. And in the end of his career, he won championships with the Lakers. So he completes the full circle and does it all. Maybe not the most popular player, right, but pound for pound, hit for hit, game for game, greatest impact on the sport, and the GOAT is Wilt Chamberlain. So you and I have been working on a St. Cecilia documentary project. I foresee that coming to fruition. I think it's undeniable. Just anybody who listens to this podcast and hears the amount of context, the greatness that has emanated from St. Cecilia, this little piece of hardwood, this hot box at the corner of Burlingame and Grand River? Livernois. I don't think it's any question that St. Cecilia is the most storied gym in the history of neighborhood basketball.
Exactly right.
Amen. Thank you so much for joining us. Sam Washington and I went through the deep dive. We talked to you about
Detroit basketball in its heyday and how much impact it had on the National Basketball Association. We hope you enjoyed it. Keep following us. We're going to be talking more about basketball, and we'll have Sam Washington back on the broadcast at the end of the season before we go into the playoffs for the wrap-up.